what I want to start looking at is adding some detail to the ceilings. So if I start off by going to the ground floor or level 1, this is what my ceiling plan looks like right now. There's not really anything in there because there's no ceilings. So if we look at a section, you can see it's just like that. There is no ceiling in here. It's just that floor. See, it's a floor, and then this floor, and then a ceiling would exist somewhere in between here. So let's go in and add a ceiling. So to do that, you can start these off in plan view. So I'm just going to hide these by category here, just so I don't want to see those in my view. And if you start looking at architecture and then you come over here to ceiling, you'll see that there's two main types of ceiling. One is the automatic ceiling, and then there's the sketch ceiling. So regardless which one you do, you're going to be in this kind of like editing mode that we've seen for some of the other components that we're making. So just like your walls and the floors and things like that, those are all different system families. So there's two main types of families in Revit. You have the systems, which exist only in this project, and then there's the component families, which can exist in any project that you can load in. So if it's a true Revit family with like a .rfa like extension, that's the component family. So if you think of like a desk or like a door, all of those types of families, you have different ways of controlling them, and you can save them outside of your Revit project and then reuse them. But the walls, the floors, ceilings, those you have to model in place, and then on the next project you would have to draw them again. So the way that the actual family type, you can save those, but the actual wall itself is not going to be the same physical wall. Does that make sense? Like the Revit family like components, those are like blocks that we were using in CAD, where you can always just grab the same block. So these guys, the first thing you want to look at is, so I'm going to show you both of these, although unless you have a pretty simple shape, the sketch ceiling will be more reliable. The automatic ceiling will just kind of fill the room. So if that's what you're looking for, then and it's a simple enough shape and it's nice and closed like that, where Revit can easily detect all the boundaries, then the automatic one works. But most places I've worked tell you not to use automatic because there's always some weird little thing that Revit won't be able to read, and then you don't catch it, and then it just throws you off later. So it's always more reliable to use the sketch ceiling. Although if you have, like this room, just a perfect square, and it's pretty small, so the automatic ceiling might work just fine. The first thing to do is come over here on the left on your type and choose what type of ceiling you want to create. By default, there's just a generic one, and then we have a couple of acoustical ceiling tiles, ACT systems, and then gypsum on metal stud, so like a drywall ceiling. And let's just start with a 2x2. Actually, let's do a 2x4, so there's a difference in direction. And then if you look on the left, you have a bunch of options. So just like when we were making walls, remember you had the type and then the instance settings. So these will control this specific ceiling, and these control all the types of ceilings that are the same. If you have automatic ceiling selected, all you need to do is, once you've picked the right ceiling, you told it kind of like where you want it to go, you just click in the space. So if you click, you'll get a ceiling. Here you get a ceiling. Yeah, question? You have to click ceiling first. So once you click ceiling, it should take you to this modify kind of thing, and then you would have these two options. You have to be in the floor plan, in the reflected ceiling plan view. So once you have that, you'll notice if I come over here and try and grab this ceiling. So now let's go back to that section and see what it has in it now. So here we can see that it has actually gone in and created something. So I activate this viewport and click on it. you can see that that's in there. The 2x4 ceiling is at 8 feet high, which aligns with that mullion. So that works there. So if we go back and see in the floor plan view, you're not going to see it because the floor plan is cut and it looks down. The RCP is cut and it looks up. So that's how you can always tell the difference between the two. So once we've created a ceiling, you can change the height. You can change what level that reference is being measured off of. And then you've also got a bunch of different ways we can adjust this. And if we need to change the type completely, you can go to edit type and then duplicate it. And let's say we wanted a 1x4. Then you could go into edit. You could change these different, like the actual makeup. You can change all the different properties of it. Excuse me. Thank you. So if you wanted to change the pattern, you could do that too. And then we've got all that there. So here you can see the different ones, and then kind of like all the settings on them. So if we go back to our kind of standard one, the 2x4, I'm going to zoom in here and show you that you can kind of change the way these things work. So one thing that's nice to do is to kind of align your ceiling tiles so that you get like a nice clean one on the end, or center the tiles in the space. So to do that, you can actually use the standard align tool that we were using for everything else. And if you click your wall and you say align, and then you click that grid line for that ACT, it will actually shift the ceiling. And then if you click this one, we can align there. And if you want that relationship to be locked, you would then hit the little lock. And that will make sure that if you ever change any setting in there, that grid line stays aligned with that wall. Once you navigate away from it, that lock will disappear. But we can do the same thing with this one, just to make sure there. If you wanted to do, let's say you wanted these to run in the other direction, we could do that. You could click here, and then now you align that, or you can rotate it. There's like a ton of different things you can do. You can do like an angle. You can do oh, and so this is the automatic, where it just drops like a ceiling in the whole space. Let's say I wanted to do a different shape. We can grab, so let's see if I can tab over to that ceiling here. So let's say I only want that in this real rectangle area, and I wanted a different ceiling in this little bump out. You can go to edit boundary, and then just like we did with the floor, we can come in here, select all that, delete it, and then we can use the trim tool to close this. And it's going to use that as the bounding area for the ceiling. So that did that, and then here we have a different space. So in order to fill it into there, you would want to go back to architecture, ceiling, and then we can do sketch ceiling. And once you start sketching, you have the same sketching tools that we had before, like for floors and roofs and stuff like that. And then I'm going to grab the rectangle one and just draw a rectangle here to kind of fill that in. And then you can make that drywall and say accept. And that should be in there. And if you want to change that one, so then you can adjust those to be different heights than the other one. Like we can move this one up and say this should be up to 10. And then once you do that, it'll go up. So that's the first part of a ceiling. In order to add like light fixtures or like diffuser and stuff like that, those have to live on a ceiling. So until you add the ceiling, they won't let you host them. You can't just put like a light that's supposed to go on the ceiling on the wall and just expect Revit to know like how to do it. So once you have that, this will be kind of like our first look at component families and placing them in. So to do that, you can go to the component tab. If you click this down, you can see there's two ways to do it. You can place a component, or you can model in place. Model in place we'll look at later, but that's something that's more like custom to a specific project. If you have like a weird kind of counter or something. The other way is place a component, the standard way. So once you do that, Revit will bring you here to kind of this menu, and there's a bunch of standard component families that are loaded in by default based off of this template. So we have a desk, some mutton pattern, parking spaces, and then some trees. So we got some like rails and stuff, wood panels, and then if I wanted to load a different one, so let's say I wanted to load like a light fixture, I wouldn't use any of these. I would go here where it says load family. So they give you like a little shortcut, or you could go to insert load family. It's the same thing. So if you go to load family, now we can start looking for what is it that you want to load. So if it's so if it's a lighting fixture, there's a lighting, and you can go in lighting. Do you want to go MEP or architectural? So I'm going to go architectural, internal or external lighting. And you can see here like a little preview of what it is you're going to get. So there's like brown, linear box, recessed cans, LED lights, spotlights. There's tons of different ones, wall washers, arm. So that's like for parking. A linear lamp. What's the difference between these two? So we can grab this guy. And then once you click it, it'll load it into the project, and you can see it won't let you place it anywhere until you land on a ceiling. And once you land on the ceiling, you can place this in here, and we can go there, and it will live on that ceiling. And if you need to adjust it, you can select it, and we can say rotate about there, 90. And if you wanted to center that in between these two, you could do that. There's a bunch of ways like you can adjust this. Let's say we aligned our tiles to that wall. I don't want to go there. So then you know that's 2 feet, 4 feet. So you would want it at 5 feet there. So if you click this, you would know that oops, my mouse moved over. Man.
Well, in here, none of the created elements are visible in reflected ceiling.
Well, make sure that when you place it, you look at what height it's set to, and what this is set to, what level you're placing it, because you can sometimes place it, but it's set to a different level. So it will look at where your mouse is, and as soon as you click, it places it based off of what level you have it set to go to. And sometimes it's not visible. So if I wanted to see this in 3D, I'm going to make a selection over this. Oops. And then hit my 3D view here. And let's pull this down. And bring my ceiling up. And there you can kind of see it in there. So there's that centered in there on the tile. If I wanted to add, now let's say I want to put like can lights all along the side, like centered on each tile, we can do that. Or in the drywall here, we can click that, architecture, component. You can look at which options you had here, and if you don't like those, you go load family, lighting, architectural, internal, recess can, open. What's it doing?
This would be a rabbit hole. For some reason, I opened it up after this is the first time I've opened it up since last class, I admit. My first floor, second floor don't show stairs, they don't show room labels, but I go to sheets and they're all there. In fact, my first floor doesn't show some of the doors or
Check.
the windows.
See if you've changed stuff on the view template or on the visibility.
I looked at the visibility graphics, it says to show stairs, so that was my first thing. Graphic display name. And now when I do shift and rotate around, so I can shift around, it like it really is messed up. I don't know. Oh, there we go. It must have selected. You remember when I put my site plan in and it had that massive boundary on it?
Mm-hmm.
I suspect that maybe it selected that when I was doing the shift and rotate because it was rotating a very big radius. Let's see. Did they show up in the building section?
Your lights?
Well, yeah,
if they're visible, they should.
There they are. I don't have big enough windows to see through the lights.
That's such a tiny light.
So even like in some of this, I'm gonna want hard ceilings. So in the bathrooms too, right? So you can put the. And is that typical? Even though we did this out of wood to put metal. They just did a hard ceiling attached to the wood truss, wood floor truss.
It just depends. I mean, on like where you're building, like what level. I mean, probably in these things they would have an exposed ceiling or something like that, or I've seen all kinds of stuff where it just
depends. In the main
depends.
sections, I definitely would want some exposed ceilings, and I have those curtain walls that go all the way to the bottom with a bearing because I have upset edge. So back to visibility graphics.
So does this make sense to everyone? You guys get the ceilings and how to add lights and stuff to it. So adding a diffuser is the same exact thing. You just load the family and make sure you put it in there, and then you can align it to like whatever it needs to be aligned to.
And I see fire alarms are here as well, right? In the same family.
Yeah, I mean there's tons of stuff. Everything you can imagine is in there. And if not, I mean later on we'll look at how to make your own families and save them and bring them in. So if you wanted to model something like super custom, you could do that. But for now we're just looking at what's in the library already.
Do manufacturers have their own libraries?
Yep. So most manufacturers, you can go on their website and you can look at like their products and like let's
so
say
they have some elaborate chandeliers or whatever that you can just get them from there, right?
right. So let's say like Vega has lighting. Pretty sure they have some. Now, oops. So if you go to, let's just say like one of these. That's kind of cool. A lot of times when you go to like information or somewhere along here, where is it? I don't know how to find it on their website, but usually you'll see a link at the bottom that says models or CAD files and stuff, and when you look they'll say like CAD symbol, and then they'll say Revit model or SketchUp model or Max, and then you just download it. But you want to be careful because they'll model all the detail possible in it, because they're basically,
So the file will be too big.
it'll be super huge, and then it will put a ton of junk into the file that you don't really need. So what you can do is download their model and then open it separate and then simplify it down, or you could just mass something around it that's the same size, and you save that as your own Revit family, and then you could bring that in. That's how we do it at our office, because it gets too heavy if you just start downloading all these stuff. Because let's say like you put this pen in there, they'll have like 8 million surfaces for the curvature of the pen cap. But then in the grand scheme of the project, it's tiny compared to the whole building, but that'll have like a ton of information in it. So you want your families to be light and simple and just detailed enough to kind of communicate what they need to, like the size, the overall shape, and like the proportions of it, but you don't need like more detail in the chair than in your whole building. So you can always have that separate with like more information. So we'll look at that more once we get into like families and creating them on our own. So now that we have ceilings, that's how you do them. They're pretty straightforward. You can adjust the heights up and down and all that, and then once we get into adding more detail, we'll look at more tools that you can use with ceilings, but that will get you 90% of the way there. So the next thing I